Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to show you how to draw fur. And so specifically we're going to go over the underlying fundamentals of drawing fur so that you'll be able to draw whatever you want to draw with different animals, but I'm going to show you 7 different versions so you'll be able to draw a lot of different things. Okay, so let's start with leopard prints. So leopard prints, you're going to look at every spot is a little bit different. So they have a very distinctive pattern. And the trick for drawing leopard is that you're going to use lines to kind of go around the leopard spots that will make it look like it kind of sits into the fur. So it's not just like the spots on its own, but that little bit of shading around the spots are going to really help bring the drawing to the next level. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one I'm doing here is a lion. So lion fur, it's sort of like little collections of tufts, like individually, like groupings. So what you want to do here is you want to layer your lines and look at the shading. When you're drawing, you're going to be having layers of lines, and that's going to be what's going to make it look more like fur. And whenever you're drawing fur, what you want to be doing is looking at like the direction that it's going in. Usually when people draw fur, they sometimes kind of like generalize and they just kind of like make lines that are kind of all going different directions. But when you look at any fur, it usually follows kind of a pattern, like it's going in a specific direction. So those are the kind of things that you want to observe whenever you're drawing fur in general. But as you can see here, I have kind of collections or groupings, to show in the individual tufts that are in the fur. And you'll notice that in this drawing, I'm going pretty fast with my line quality. So, try those kind of like quick gestural lines. That's going to work the best for this kind of drawing when you're drawing fur. Okay, next one we're doing is cat fur. So this is like tabby cat, where you have some stripes. So I sped this up a little bit. So as always, you can slow down the video if it's too fast and you want to see it going a little bit slower. But always for fur, you're going to be doing pretty quick lines. And what you want to do is you want to just look at that pattern. And as you continue going, you're going to just like add collections of lines to make the stripes. So the line quality is kind of the same throughout. And I'm using a 005 micron pen in this, and I'll link in the description for that set of pens. So I'm just kind of going quick, and where the stripes are, I'm just layering more lines. But again, I'm thinking about the direction that my lines are going in because I want to create that stripe pattern. And again, try those sort of like nice, light, wispy lines and practice doing those kind of lines, right? So that's when you're doing fur, that's the kind of line quality that you want, where you're kind of doing these wispy, light lines. If you press down too much, you're going to have more trouble. Okay, so next one is rabbit fur. So rabbit fur, again, you're going to be using some fast lines, and you want those fast sort of wispy lines. I'm using a 01 micron pen in this one. So I kind of changed up the pen that I'm using depending on what I'm drawing a little bit. So this is kind of like not quite as fine as the 005, but one that I do after this is a Hedgehog, and then I'm using like the 08. So I tried different ones just to kind of get different effects. So with this one, it's sort of like growing out of one point. So, whenever I'm drawing something like this for the first time, what you want to try to do is get a reference to work from. So make sure that you're working from something like a photograph if you're drawing fur and you're practicing. So for this, it's like as I'm working, I'm looking at sort of like where the darks are in the pattern and sort of trying to show that through my line. So when you look at fur, look at like the values, so how dark are certain areas, or some areas lighter. And the way that you can get those effects is that as you're working, you're going to layer the lines. The more you layer, of course, the darker it's going to get, right? So, if there's an area that's really dark, you want to just keep layering your lines, and then it'll look more realistic. Okay, so that's another tip for drawing fur. And so just as a general thing, I can't stress enough how much it's important to use these sort of like light wispy lines. So you really want to practice like your line pressure. If you're someone that's been drawing and your line pressure is all the same and you're like pressing down a lot, you're going to have more trouble with this than if you're able to do sort of these quick wispy lines. So that's something definitely just to practice, like if it's new, a new concept. And I'll link in the description, like if you're new to pen and ink and you came across this video and you want just sort of like some basics about how to use pen and ink well, I'm going to link a couple of videos that will help with that as you're, getting more accustomed to this medium. So you'll notice that in terms of the value, and that's when I say value, I really just mean like the difference between really dark areas and middle tone areas and light areas. That's, I use that word a lot, so I wanted just to kind of define it. So the dark values, I'm just getting that by just going over those sections. So if you have, a swatch of fur that you're drawing from and it's got some areas that are really dark, you want to just keep going over that and like layer, just keep going over with your lines, and then you'll get to that point of it looking very realistic. Okay. The next one I'm doing is dog fur. So for this, again, I'm looking at the direction that the fur is going in. So in this case, it's kind of like there's sort of like different groupings of the fur. And so in anything that you're drawing, again, you want to use a reference just to kind of give yourself something to work from. I think is very helpful. And again, I'm using these quick, fast lines. And the thing with the dog fur is that, again, there's sort of differences in the value. So there's some areas that are going to be darker. There's some areas that are going to be a little bit lighter. So I'm trying to accomplish some of that too. Again, like when you do stuff with fur, sometimes like at first it doesn't look very good. And it kind of takes a little while of layering to get it to look like the best effect. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe button and like the video. And if you leave a comment of other things that you would like to see me draw, put that in the comments. I read the comments, and sometimes I do take whatever is in the comment and I do a video around the different things that you're dealing with in your drawings and that you're liking to see more of. So thank you for that. If you are trying to draw animals, let me know what animals you're drawing. Okay, so next one we're going to do is hedgehog. So for the hedgehog, I'm using a 0.8 micron pen. So for that, you'll notice that, if you kind of rewind to earlier ones, the line on those was much smaller, right? This one is a kind of a fatter pen, so it's going to give a very different mark. And I chose this because I wanted kind of like a little bit more of a graphic look. So again, you're using pretty quick marks on this, and you're trying to get the sort of like jagged spiky texture that a hedgehog has. So again, the trick for all of this is fast lines and learning how to control the line pressure of your pen. So that's a skill that I really recommend you spend a little bit of time trying to do. It will really help you if you're drawing fur, if you're drawing hair, lots of different things like that is pretty key. So as you can see, there's some areas that I'm just going over more because I want them to be darker, and then there's some areas that I'm leaving a little bit lighter. So this just gives you some ideas for how you might draw a hedgehog. Okay, so the last one that I'm doing is bear fur. And so for that, the texture is a little bit coarser, right? So I want to make sure that the marks that I'm using are ultimately going to show that different type of texture. And kind of similar to the lion, which had those individual tufts, the way that the bear fur is that it sort of like collects in certain areas. So it has a very different texture than say like the cat fur, which has, like a finer texture. So you want to kind of look at what's happening with whatever you're drawing. Like, are there lots of, kind of clumps of the fur that sort of like clump together as separate sections? Or does it look like it's all kind of like shiny and, sleek and that kind of texture? So those are going to be differences that you can show in your drawing through your marks. And I know sometimes people are a little bit worried with pen that they're going to mess up. I think it's actually better to just like go for it. And, if you overwork it, you overwork it, than to be too sort of like timid and worried that you're going to mess it up. So just try to be confident with your lines. Use this as a guide. And thanks again for joining. Please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time.